You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Good evening and welcome to episode 151 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. Cody, Abrams, Melbourne, and our good buddy Camren Murray as well. And as you can see, we're all in person for this one. The holidays are coming up, boys. This is awesome because we haven't done this in so long. This is part one of our World Juniors preview episode, players to watch in each group, Group A and Group B. First of all, how you guys doing?
Doing good. Happy to be back in town. It always means that I'm about to play a ton of pond hockey and see friends and family, and there's just a lot to love about this time of year. I'm wearing this sweater because I thought this was a Christmas episode, and I'm the only one. You're both wearing white shirts, so a little awkward.
I mean, if we planned for it, I brought a Christmas sweater down just because on Friday, that's what we're doing with some of our buddies. We're throwing Christmas sweaters on and having a little shindig. So I brought one. I could have thrown it on. It's a nice Leafs one. It would have fit the theme of the podcast, but I guess I won't be doing that now since we've already started, but it is what it is. I'm happy to be home. The only thing is, I can't really control the conditions of recording. This is a bit of a different setup. We've only got one mic going, so I wanted to let everybody listening and watching know that this is kind of the best we could do in this scenario with our USB mics. Plus, can't control the conditions in the sense that we've got something loud going on in the background, so hopefully it's not tarnishing your listening experience. I wanted to get that out of the way. Camren is our special guest on this episode because he beat me in fantasy last week. The first guy to do so. So we're going to get into that, but before I do, Camren, how's it going? Maybe introduce yourself to the pod quickly.
Hello, everyone. Everyone should know who I am, but those who don't, Chad's brother-in-law, Camren. And coming off a big win last week, beating the champ. So feeling pretty good.
Absolutely.
He's become the man of the people. Not the hero we need, but maybe the hero we deserve. Because finally someone has dethroned Chad. The 9-0 Chad Melbourne has been taken down. The tyranny is coming to an end. We're starting to see a bit of hope, a bright light at the end of the tunnel that might be someone decommissioning him.
It's over.
Yeah, exactly. Not only did you beat your brother-in-law, you beat our corrupt commissioner of the Yahoo Boys in the Booth Fantasy Hockey League.
There's been a lot of talk, and I might be spoiling something to Chad here, but there's been a lot of talk about a coup. Maybe someone
mutiny
taking him down and maybe overthrowing him, maybe taking him out of the fantasy league all in all.
Listen, I want to say this about the fantasy league, okay? Harper, are you listening up here? I want to say this.
Yes, I'm listening.
I have been pretty fair recently, and I've done things that have been in the best interest of the fantasy league, like helping out John the other day. So I've been a benevolent commissioner as of late. And I will say some teams are still being able to thrive under my rule, like the 10-0 team that's at number one right now, my buddy Jacob. So, I mean, listen, don't hate the commissioner, hate the game is what I want to say. I feel like I've been pretty fair recently. I wanted to get that out there.
Well, all right. Anyway, do you want to get into more specifics about your matchup against your brother-in-law and who performed for you last week and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, my boys showed up last week. I mean, Keandre Miller had 25.5 points for me.
That's not showing up. That is way above that.
He was there. I was projected to lose last week, but everybody showed up, so...
Yeah.
Excellent.
Charlie Lindgren was a unreal pickup for me with Darcy Kemper.
Oh my God, dude. He was fantastic.
Yeah, you had a lot of guys who had some good points there. So at the start of the week, me versus you, it was projected to finish 212 to 195 for me. And that's with all of our games played. And then you had Brock Nelson, 19 points.
12th round.
Yeah, 12th round steal. Artemi Panarin, 25 points. Brady Tkachuk, 26 points. Jimmy Vesey, 19 points. Two of them against the Leafs, two of the goals that he scored. Then you had Brady Shea, who had 21 points, Tyler Toffoli with 14, Condre Miller with 25, like you mentioned, Charlie Lindgren with 19, Tristan Jarry with 18. Everybody showed up. And then on my team, I had a whole lot of nothing all week long, and I don't understand what happened. And it upset me. But you finally, someone did it. Someone had to do it. And
I'm glad it was me.
I am too.
Oh, we're glad too. Yeah. No, it's awesome. A lot of depth there, Cam. That was good, man.
That was a good week.
For me, not a very eventful week. Lost by like 30 to Gem, Poppy's Milk there. But I will say Zach Hyman, 32 points. He was huge, and against our buddy Taylor Prosser this week. So I'm up on him right now. We'll see how it goes. Big thing for me is having Jeff Skinner back. He got suspended for 3 games.
Yes.
I don't know what got into him. I think like a psycho switch went off and cross-checks Jake Gensel in the face and gets a 3-game ban.
So
and
dirty.
So anyway,
Vicious.
glad he's back now.
Only way I can describe that is vicious.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Anyway, Case, let's
I got dumped on last week. Chunk, who was talking a lot of game heading into this week, saying he was going to pass Remy after his questionable trades from last week. He said he was going to pass him this week. He was going to win his week. Well, it was against me, and he put up a good game, 201 points. Kaprizov went off for him. No surprise there. Marchessault, one of his best weeks. Jonathan Taves, back to prime Taves. What was going on there? No clue. And Officer Bob, 24.4 points. Are you kidding me? My team absolutely shit the bed. No one showed up. I talked about to you guys before, Patrick Laine, how inconsistent he's been. He got 0.5 points, 0.25 points for me, so I bench him over, Riley Smith and a couple others. It's always a tough pick for me in wingers because I got strong wingers. And then Laine gets a goal and an assist. I'm like, of course, that's just what he does. So I lost that week and looking to bounce back this week against Jeff. He's got a good team. I gotta hope that McDavid can only be limited to 6 goals and 7 assists this week instead of the 14 and 12. Oh, you have McDavid.
I got McDavid.
Oh, McDavid. Yeah, that's my fear, man. I'm projected to win, but I feel like I'm gonna get McDavid, as you say, because he's scary.
Yeah.
Cam, I know you got to get going, but before that, just a quick thought on the Ottawa Senators, who have kind of turned things around. They had their 4-game win streak ended over the weekend there against Minnesota. But your thoughts on the Senators and how they've turned it around? I think a big part of it is better goaltending.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I thought they were. There's a lot of hype leading up to them at the start of the year, and they kind of came out slow, but they're starting to turn it around, and hopefully put more wins together. And
no, definitely.
Yeah,
maybe some playoffs.
There were some people trying to put them ahead of the Detroit Red Wings at the beginning of the season, if anyone recalls that, because I had Detroit in a playoff spot, which they are right now, and no, apparently the Sens were better.
I mean, someone had the Bruins over both, so did we all have the Bruins over both, Harp? I don't think so.
No. Again, it was Pittsburgh last year for me. I was too hard on them. Nope. And then Boston this year, and man, does that ever look bad. Our good buddy Mark Breyer in Brockville, he's a big Bruins fan, and he's just messaging me like every week, like, I'm going to take on the Bruins. Jeez.
Yeah.
Anyway. The Sens, though, DeBrincat, he is finally showing Sens fans what he can do.
Yeah. Yes.
There was that eight Sens goals in a row that he had a factor on, 8 points, 8 goals. He's on fire. My dad cannot stop talking about how much he loves Claude Giroux. He is cloud 9 whenever he's on the ice. And Tyler Mott, that's his other new favorite player. He's
player of the game.
His work ethic and just the way he plays a game. That's like the favorite style of a 60-year-old man. So it makes a lot of sense. But the Sens are kind of looking like what they were supposed to.
Yeah,
and it's exciting. It's got to be.
Absolutely.
Another team like that, by the way, I wanted to mention, you kind of brought them up, is Pittsburgh, who started off really slowly to start the year, but they've been on a tear their last 15 games.
Yes, and I hate to say it, but the New York Rangers are going right now as well after a rocky start. So,
do you remember the stats I sent you about the Rangers a couple days ago? It's
the Rangers analytically have been much worse in the last few weeks than
much worse,
but they're winning more games. Right, so that's the most Rangers hockey you can do.
Exactly.
Their first 20 games or whatever were such their analytics were bad, but better. They were actually pretty good compared to a lot of other teams, but bad considering their outcome. Their outcome was pretty bad, is what I'm trying to get at, and their analytics were better than that. And I think they were 11-10 and something through 20 some odd games, and they looked okay, but they weren't getting the wins. And now they've won, I think, 5 straight, and their analytics are just terrible. So it's up and down.
Outshot attempt, outshot chance, out goals against, or goals expected. It's just everything points towards them losing, and now they start winning. It's they're just such a dumb team.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a weird team.
And going back to you, Cam, with your fantasy squad, big part of the Capitals turnaround is Charlie Lindgren, like you mentioned there. So
Darcy Kemper's been reactivated.
Yeah.
Which, again, is just proof of what we've talked about, that goaltenders are voodoo, because they traded both their goalies. They had Kemper, who was doing well for them, and then he's gone. So Charlie Lindgren is now the reason they're winning games. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all out of whack.
Another goaltender that used to be theirs is Phoenix Copley, who's the starter in LA all of a sudden, and Peterson, who signed a huge contract, is in the AHL. Goaltending is such voodoo, man. Don't sign any goalie for more than 2 years, and keep it at a Stuart Skinner.
I was going to say, unless it's Stuart Skinner.
Great contract.
That was
great call by me, too, again.
What'd you say?
Well, just at the start of the year that he would rise to that level of did I say that? I said that about Logan Thompson. I apologize.
I think
but
the thing
he's kind of underneath just by a little bit.
The thing with Skinner, though, is that I think it's less about how well he's played and more about how poorly Jack Campbell has played.
Well, Skinner has played well. 915 save percentage in a losing record. Alberta is killing me right now. I have Markstrom and Skinner, and it's absolutely killing me, because Skinner is playing well but losing, and Markstrom is playing poor and losing. So it's I can't get any points from goaltending right now, and it's killing me. But Jack Campbell, I feel bad because there's no one in this league who I'm rooting against more than Jack Campbell so far this season, because I have Stuart Skinner.
Oh, I see. Because you have Skinner.
Yeah, no, I'm every time Jack Campbell puts up an 860 game, I'm perfect.
Yeah. I've got him for another 4.5 seasons at $5 million. So.
Yeah, and then Skinner, nice 3-year extension, $2.6 million AAV. Thank you very much.
Yeah, to me, that was the perfect deal, because
that's a goalie contract. Give goalies who haven't proved themselves that contract.
Yeah. Well, because you can still,
unless you're Carter Hutton in Buffalo.
Yeah. You can still bury most of that, though, if you have to send them down and no one claims them. You can still bury, I think it's 1 point something in the AHL.
Exactly.
So it's not terrible to have that against the cap for his deal. But while we're still kind of technically in Fantasy Corner, I think we went off the rails a little bit, but while we're still in Fantasy Corner, I wanted to mention that this week, it's Tuesday already, so I want to talk about the rest of the week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Mm-hmm. Those are the only 3 days with games for anybody listening. There's no games on the weekend because of Christmas and Boxing Day.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at players to pick up, Wednesday and Thursday, Minnesota is the only team that plays back-to-back. You're probably not going to have space on your roster for Friday because your team is going to be, all your players are probably going to be playing, except maybe a goalie. You might be able to snag a goalie, but if you're looking to get, value adds, try to find a guy who plays for Minnesota and get that back-to-back, because those are the only games you're going to be able to get for the rest of the week.
If you can get a guy, get Frederick Gaudreau, who is center, left wing, right wing, and plays decent minutes in Minnesota.
Yeah, no, he's a good player for them too. Mason Shaw has been a decent player for them as well, and so I wouldn't mind picking him up, or a Connor Dewar as well.
He's available right now. Yeah. I've been looking at him.
Connor Dewar?
No, Mason Shaw.
Because I had him last week, and I think he put up negative points for me. So.
And I did pick up Kalen Addison
a
few weeks back, and he's been good for Minnesota as well. And they're another team that's figured it out for sure.
But in terms of the schedule this week, that's a team that it makes sense to grab a guy from, because you get 2 games.
Perfect.
And if your opponent isn't listening to this episode, or they don't know, they're going to be at a loss, and you might win your week because of it. So there you go.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, boys, are we ready to get into our Group A players to watch here?
Yes, let's go ahead. I do have a bit of an announcement.
Oh, yes, we do.
So I'm wondering if I should do that now, or if I should do it in an ad read. How about let's do it in a quick ad read, because I'll insert that after, and we can get going with the rest of the episode.
All right, sounds good.
Right now.
Sounds good.
What's going on, guys? We're super excited to announce that we have a new partnership with the betting company BetStamp. So normally what we're going to be doing going forward, we're going to have a betting corner on the show. This week, because we just recorded 2 episodes in a row for our players to watch of the World Juniors this year, Groups A and Groups B. That was an absolute marathon. We didn't get a chance to get this quick ad read in and to get our picks in for the betting corner. So I'm just doing this right now quickly, just so that you know, the listener, that we have a new partnership with BetStamp. So what is BetStamp, and how does it work? Well, if you've ever heard of line shopping, BetStamp is going to help you out tremendously with that. So betting lines have different odds at each sportsbook, and by using the BetStamp app, you can line shop across all sportsbooks to ensure that you're finding the best value available for your wager. So for example, tomorrow night, December 21st, we've got some games on, and I'm looking here at Tampa Bay and Detroit. Tampa Bay just had a tough loss against Toronto, and they're playing a back-to-back against Detroit. Obviously, Tampa, had a pretty tough game. It was a 4-1 game against Toronto, and it's a back-to-back. Despite them being the favorites, I think there's some value in picking Detroit here. I think, a rested team playing against a tired Tampa Bay team who, frankly, probably isn't going to get up for that Detroit game. So that's my pick for this week. Ride if you'd like. There's some pretty good odds here. I'm looking at it right now. The best odds that you can get right now are at plus 150, but looking at some other apps, the worst odds that you can get right now are plus 124. So that's the point of using BetStamp, is to make sure that you get the best odds for your wager, because you're going to bet anyway. So you might as well use BetStamp and get the absolute best odds with the sportsbook of your choosing. So Betano right now has it at 150. So does BetSafe, and then CoolBet is the worst odds currently at plus 124 for Detroit to win. So if you're looking for some value, maybe add that game in with Detroit winning on the money line into your 2-3 team parlay and make a bit of money. So essentially, that's the betting corner. That's what we're going to do every week from here on out. How we're going to structure episodes going forward is do our intro, get right into the betting corner. One guy is going to make a pick of the week, and the other 2 guys are going to say if they're going to ride with that or not. Then we'll get into the regular content of the episode, and then finally at the end we will do fantasy corner. That's not going away, that's not going anywhere. We're just going to do it at the end now. So super excited to be partnered with BetStamp, and please download it using our code Boys in the Booth. It'll really help us out, and you'll be able to save some money by line shopping. So thanks, guys, and here's back to the show.
All right, fellas, let's get into players to watch in Group A. of the 2023 World Juniors in Halifax and Moncton. Of course, starts Boxing Day. So, of course, we're going to start with Canada. And, Case, let's go to you first, brother.
I think this is an easy pick for me. By far, the standout player that I loved to watch last year. He was the motor of the team. He was a top 3 player on the team last year, I believe. Let me just name off a few accolades he got in his last season. Start with CHL Player of the Year. Best face-off percentage at the World Juniors. World Juniors gold medal. World Juniors top 3 player on a team. WHL First All-Star. WHL Most Sportsmanlike Player. WHL Player of the Year. WHL Most Goals. And WHL Most Points. That's the stank oven himself, Logan Stankoven. I absolutely loved watching him play last year. Like I said, he was the motor. I think he's going to be a standout player again this year. He's got another kick at the can to be a top 3 player. I think he could be the MVP of this tournament if he really sets his mind to it. There's a few Canadians, like, I don't know if either of you guys are going to talk about Shane Wright. Like, he has a bone to pick with the world right now, so I expected him to have a huge season. Connor Bedard is another standout Canadian that, of course, is in the conversation to be one of the best players in this tournament, but Stankoven, like, I love the way he plays. They used him in every single play, or like, you know, power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5, all the tough moments, the last minutes of the game. He's just so important to this team, and he's so fun to watch.
Absolutely. Another great pick of the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, that team is stacked in the prospect pool, and then having a great season this year. They're
a weird team because finally their old guard is being replaced, but on the fly by their new guard.
And you said it right there. That's exactly what Jeff Merrick said. He said that Dallas and Jim Nill and company, what they did was, I think, what a lot of teams are jealous of. They kind of did a rebuild on the fly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And think about the 2018 draft, right, where you got Heiskanen. 17, where you got Heiskanen, your number 1 D-man. You got Jason Robertson, your number 1 forward, maybe a MVP candidate one of these years.
Yeah.
And you got Jake Ottinger,
your franchise goalie,
a future Vezina Trophy winner, all in the same draft. So that year alone basically rebuilt that team. But we're talking about Logan Stankoven here. The stank oven himself, as you said. Dude, 10 points in 7 games last year for this team, or in the summer tournament, rather. And then this year in the WHL, 44 points in 21 games. Are you kidding me?
2 points per game.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. On route to be another CHL Player of the Year.
That's ridiculous. And like we mentioned, a second round draft pick of the Dallas Stars in 2021. Yeah, this guy's going to be a standout player at the tournament, no question. Now, there are going to be a handful because obviously being Canadian, that's who we pay attention to the most. But this is a stacked team this year, guys. So even though I don't think we're going to talk at length about, you know, players like Connor Bedard, Shane Wright, guys like that, this team is very stacked and also very deep as well. And
so many returning players from their gold medal team. Like that's a sign of things to come right there.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. So Stankoven is a really good pick. That's going to be a player I'm going to be glued on this entire tournament. And by the way, I should say that this episode, we do this every year, players to watch at the World Junior Championship. We do it group by group, team by team, and it's not necessarily the best players on the team, though Stankoven is going to be one of the best players. It's players who have either an interesting story, are going to be draft eligible, have already been drafted, and maybe they've become a steal of the draft. So there's a lot of different angles we can approach this at. It's not just the best players on the team. So I wanted to mention that as we get into this episode. But yeah, Stankoven, great pick.
And that's our whole goal, right? It's not to take the low-hanging fruit and, okay, let's talk about Wright, Fantilli, Bedard. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. It's to get... it's to get some of our...
You're going to hate who I'm taking then.
it's to get, hopefully get our listeners familiar with guys that they didn't think about or don't really know, right? So...
Exactly.
Chad, let's go to you with your guy to watch on Canada.
You might think this is low-hanging fruit, as you just mentioned, but I want to talk about Adam Fantilli, because I feel like everyone, who has looked into this 2023 draft at all knows of two players right away. It's Connor Bedard and Matvei Michkov. Everyone knows Bedard is going to go number 1, so he's been on everybody's radar since he was, 14 years old. Matvei Michkov, bit of a different story, Russian-born player, is committed to play in the KHL until 2026, but is probably the second best talent in the entire draft, according to a lot of reports. And that's arguable. But the fact that he's committed to play in Russia until 2026 is scaring a lot of teams off for that reason. So I feel like people know of those two players. Adam Fantilli, we know this player, but I feel like he gets kind of lost in the shuffle. He gets lost in this whole coverage of the draft, at least leading up to it over the last year or so. So I wanted to pick him as a player to watch. Right now he has 26 points in 16 games for Michigan in the NCAA. He's third in league scoring. He's 18. And like I mentioned, he's projected to go in the first round of this upcoming draft. And he's projected almost by every single draft to go number 2.
Yeah.
Now, that's not only because he's, obviously it's a factor that Michkov is playing in Russia until 2026, but he's also been steadily climbing up the ranks over the last year because he's just that good of a player. I mentioned the offensive production, that's something that jumps off the page to you. And, according to all of the rankings that are on Elite Prospects right now, the consolidated rankings, Elite Prospects rankings, the Hockey News, Bob McKenzie, McKean's, etc., he's number 2 or 3. So this is going to be a special player. And I'm excited to see how he kind of, creates his own narrative at this tournament, because I feel like in this draft, he's been in the shadow of those two players that I mentioned. So Adam Fantilli, it's a guy I'm going to be watching closely.
I think there's many drafts in the last 10 years that Fantilli goes first overall in. Mm-hmm. And he's, fallen circumstance to Connor Bedard being a potential generational talent.
Yeah.
Michkov, that's, no one wants to get involved with that contract at second overall. I mean, you might, but it's going to be a long time until you see him. A lot of these guys at second overall are hoping that a player is going to jump right into their lineup, and the opportunities here with Fantilli, he's producing at that level of, borderline ready to be in the NHL, and being an NCAA prospect, you can sign him right away and he's on your team. You don't have to worry about setting him to the CHL if you got to drop him to the AHL. There's a lot of flexibility there. There's also the opportunity for him to stick around in the NCAA, which a lot of players do, just like Luke Hughes and so many players in the NCAA and in this tournament. But there's a lot of flexibility there. So I wouldn't be shocked if he goes second overall. I really hope he does. And this is going to be a special player. Another player that you don't often think of the undrafted players on Canada, because it's always a team full of first round picks. But this guy is going to be someone to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is year 1 for him at Michigan, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, which is even it's just that much more impressive, just with his numbers and everything, and that being a stacked team with, Luke Hughes and Eric Portillo and Brendan Brisson, and, the list goes on. But he's just absolutely been ripping it up, and I have no doubt that he does go, 2 or 3 in the upcoming draft, and a team like Columbus or Philly or whoever gets their next franchise center.
Yeah, and if the production at Michigan wasn't enough, as a 17-year-old in the USHL, he had 74 points in 54 games playing for the Chicago Steel. So that's just another incredible stat from a kid so young, so talented. He's going to be a player to watch for sure.
Yeah.
And it'll depend how many minutes he gets, because that's another theme throughout this episode that we kind of have to touch on is it all depends on opportunity for a lot of these players, especially on the better teams like Canada, USA, Sweden, Finland. How much is this player actually going to play? Fantilli, I don't know where he's been slotted in. I would imagine they start him in the top 6 and go from there, because he is uber talented. Give him every opportunity to shine. But it wouldn't surprise me if when push comes to shove and they're playing in the gold medal game, maybe the coach relies on some players who, they have some more familiarity with.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Case, you've said this so many times, it's a 19-year-old's tournament, right? And so that's really what it comes down to. Anyway, my guy for Canada to watch, maybe a bit of an off-the-board pick. It's a blue liner, and I'm going with Kevin Korchinski. First rounder, the Chicago Blackhawks, 7th overall. Of course, they got that pick in the DeBrincat deal from Ottawa, over a point per game with the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL, and he may very well be Canada's best defenseman.
Wow.
On this team. There's
some good names there, though.
For sure. Zellweger, Lambos, the list goes on. But, this guy's good. And Chicago took a big swing making that deal. And they said they got their guy. And he's been, like I said, he's been over a point per game in the W. And looks like a really good offensive defenseman who skates really well up the ice and moves the puck really well, and I'll be keeping my eye on the Chicago first rounder from this past draft.
For sure.
That's an interesting pick. I didn't expect that one. There's a lot of storylines on this Canadian blue line that I'm excited about. It seems to be that they're shifting towards these players that they can really rely on defensively because there's so many weapons up front.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to get the points from your offense, or from your defense rather, and that's why you see a guy like Del Mastro get so much playing time last year, or Caden Gooley the year before. He's, he can show some offense for sure, but it's not really the name of his game, and that's an interesting point interesting pick rather. Like, I'm excited to see another defenseman on the point for Canada that I can watch. Brant Clark is another one that I'm interested in watching him because he's been spited twice by this team and left out twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even invited to camp last time around, and he's been playing in the NHL.
Yeah, made the LA Kings out of camp.
That is such a weird dynamic there. Like, that could have been a player to watch too, because like you mentioned, Case, he's been snubbed multiple times. Like, I remember we did a standalone episode one time where Hendrix Lapierre and Brant Clark were both snubbed by the team, and then they were both playing in the NHL since then. So it doesn't make any sense that Clark now is only finally getting his opportunity after being kicking around as one of the best defensive prospects in Canada for the last couple of years. But that could have been a player to watch for sure. I'm just looking at the back end, and the cool thing about it is, and like, I like how you pick Korchinski because he's a recent draft pick. Chicago needs something to cheer for in this year's World Juniors because in the NHL they don't have much to cheer for on or off the ice. So the interesting part to add to Korchinski, they also have Del Mastro, as you mentioned, Case, and Nolan Allen. So when I was looking at some of the deep pairings,
Raiders.
That's right. So when I was looking at some of the D pairs going into the tournament, or some of the rush lines, they have a Chicago Blackhawks prospect on each line. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, Chicago's going to be able to watch this tournament and watch Team Canada and actually have something to be excited for once, So,
and clearly, like, for the Blackhawks, like, they need that one guy on the blue line to, for the future, because it's not Seth Jones. Like, they need one of these guys, whether it's Korchinski or Allen or Del Mastro, to really carry the load for the future. But just with, how talented Korchinski is, how high he was drafted, that he could certainly be that defenseman of the future for them, for sure.
Oh man, you say that the line rushes has them all split up, but imagine a pairing of Del Mastro with Korchinski. You got offense, defense right there, and Chicago prospects.
Yeah,
that could be fun to watch. And then Korchinski, get him on the power play. You just feed Connor Bedard in that trigger man spot, and you're going to get a lot of points in this tournament.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to Team Sweden, fellas, and each of your players to watch for the Swedes. Case.
This podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. Winter is back, and whether you're playing pond hockey or nursing an eggnog hangover this holiday season, Liquid IV has you covered. Just one stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C. It's made with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks, premium ingredients, non-GMO, and free from gluten, dairy, and soy. There are plenty of awesome flavors too, but my personal favorite is lemon lime. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code boys_in_the_booth. That's 20% off anything when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today with Liquid IV. This podcast is sponsored by the ticket app SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes all the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Starting with me. All right, okay. I don't want to beat a dead horse with a broken record here, but I'm going to talk about Fabian Lysell because he's been my favorite player to talk about the last 2 seasons here. I talked about him 3 seasons ago with Fieldhoek, but I've watched this guy in a lot of different hockey. I've watched him in preseason games. I've seen him in the AHL now. I've seen him in the World Juniors, and he is driving whatever line he is on every time he's on the ice. Like, he is exciting to watch. He will be the quarterback of this power play. They'll have him in the D spot, right at the top of the blue line, and probably a top 3 passer in this tournament. And he's going to be exciting to watch for me. I love this player, and Boston's lucky to have him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they sure are. The thing about Lysell is that he's sort of a triple threat. He's one of those players that can do it all. He can shoot, he can pass, but he's also so effective on the rush and on gaining the zone, breaking out through the neutral zone. He's one of those players who controls the puck really well, and we saw that in the most recent tournament, which I don't think we've mentioned yet, but we're having 2 tournaments in the span of 6 months. Isn't this cool, guys?
Yeah, exactly. Last tournament was in August. That's hard to believe.
Yeah, so we saw a lot out of Lysell in the last tournament, but he's just such a dynamic weapon up front for this team. And yeah, Boston is lucky to have him. I remember when the draft was happening and we were talking about this player as maybe a top 10 talent in the draft. Yeah. And he slipped out of the top 10. Boston grabbed him up, nom, give me some great players. And that's what they did. They snagged him. He's going to be great, and he's going to be one of the best players on this Swedish team. So definitely looking forward to watching him.
A scary-looking Swedish team.
Yeah.
Yes, very. And going back to, the projected top picks in the upcoming draft, Sweden's got one of those as well.
They do. Are you sending this to me? Do you know who I was going to pick on Team Sweden?
I hope I did.
I mean, maybe you did. I don't know. Because the player that I want to talk about is 2005 born defenseman who is eligible for this year's draft and might be the highest ranked defenseman in the draft, depending on which rankings you're looking at. And that's Axel Sandin Pellikka.
I thought you were going to talk about Leo Carlson.
I could have. But I wanted to talk about a defenseman on this team. Axel Sandin Pellikka, however you want to pronounce it. I'm sure someone will correct me in the YouTube comments. But like I mentioned, he's eligible for this draft this year, and he might be the highest ranked defenseman depending on who you're talking to. I think he's either ranked 1 or 3, between 1 and 3 in terms of the highest ranked defenseman in the tournament and in the upcoming draft. And it feels like he's been climbing the rankings all year. He's one of those players who has continued to impress at the level he's playing at. Currently, through 14 games in the SHL, he just has 5 points as a defenseman, but the fact that he's playing those games as a 2005 born player is impressive in and of itself. He had 26 points through 20 games in the J20 previous to that. And like I said, guys, this is a player who continues to rise up the charts in the upcoming draft rankings. And it seems like a lot of analytics accounts that I follow on Instagram are really high on the player. So there's something about this player that is attracting some positive attention, and I want to know what that is. So he's going to be a player that I'm really looking forward to watching at this tournament on Team Sweden. It'll just depend on how many minutes he gets on the back end.
Yeah, this is going to be my first taste of him really in this tournament. I've heard like comparisons of like an Adam Boqvist so far, mostly probably because of his size and being a defenseman playing in the SHL at a young age. So obviously, that spikes my interest, and I'm definitely going to be watching him. But yeah, I don't know a ton about him, so
I don't either. But good call, because I think a lot of the focus when thinking about this group, talking about this group, is on the forward group, right?
Right.
And so that's a really good pick, and the Boqvist comparison is a great one. So that means that he can certainly skate and move the puck up ice and create offense, and so that's a good one for sure.
Yep.
All right, I've got another kind of off the board pick for a player to watch for Team Sweden, and this is another franchise that is heading into a rebuild. They haven't had a very good season. Rookie GM, and that's Mike Greer and the San Jose Sharks. So I'm going to talk about Philip Bystad, 27th overall pick in this past draft, 6'3", 187. He's a big center, and at the time that he was drafted, literally the analysts on TV were like, who is this guy? Like, this is kind of an off-the-board pick. They picked him early. He's got 11 points in 26 games in the SHL, so not great production, but from everything I've seen, by the looks of it, just a very defensively responsible center. And the Sharks need more prospects to grow and flourish, and so Bystad is going to be a guy for me. But I got to tell you, boys, it was hard not to go with Rosen or Ostlund, the two Buffalo picks for Sweden, because I'm pretty sure I talked about Rosen last year as a player to watch for Sweden. So I thought I'd go off the board a little bit and talk about the big man in the middle, Philip Bystad. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah, I didn't pick either of those guys that you mentioned because I left them up to you for Buffalo. But yeah, another interesting pick, another slightly off the board one. But we saw how much Sweden relied on Soderblom last year. That's the big muck on Detroit, right?
Yeah.
Well, they relied on him a lot. They had him in front, the net front presence. He scored that beautiful between the leg goal last year. So that's another. Philip Bystad could be the guy to fill in there. Surprisingly, not the biggest player on Sweden on forward. There's a 6'6", 216-pounder named Milton Oskarsson. But Philip Bystad, big boy himself. Like, this is probably the biggest team in the league. In the tournament, rather. As I look at it, there's a 6'4", 6'3", 6'6", 6'2", 6'3". Yeah. Big team.
Yeah, true. Definitely a good pick, Harp. Not who I was expecting you to pick, given the two Sabres prospects on the team. But yeah, I mean, he'll be definitely a guy to watch. Again, depending on ice time. And if you're a Sharks fan, you're hoping you see a glimpse of something special. Because again, if you're a fan of the Sharks, like we have some friends who are, I'm thinking of Zach Shankar, Micaiah Calder.
Yeah.
You're hoping for some excitement this year, because aside from, a couple guys like Timo Meier, Thomas Hertl putting the puck in the net this year, you don't really have much to be excited for this season except for tanking, really, except for getting a good pick in this upcoming draft.
And waiting for Eklund and Bortolo to come.
Exactly. Sure. But this season in the NHL has not been overly exciting, so you hope that a guy like Bystad gets a lot of minutes and is able to do something at the tournament. So good pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting enough, San Jose actually traded down and drafted him in that first round. They made that deal with Arizona so that the Coyotes could move up and take Connor Geekie. So interesting little tidbit there. But anyway, let's move on to Czechia. And Case, your player to watch for Czech.
All right. I've got a player that Again, I'm not going to say that this is going to be the best player on the team, but definitely a player to watch. He's a young player, and that's why I don't expect him to get a ton of playing time at first. Maybe he can steal the role like we've seen Dvorsky did with Slovakia last year.
Yep.
A young guy wearing the cage out there, but playing 20 minutes a game.
And will be another high pick in this upcoming draft.
Sure. I mean, we're going to get there.
I'm jumping ahead.
They may or may not have selected a player.
I'm talking about Edward Sale for Czechia. He is the consolidated rank 8 coming up to this draft. Really, really exciting player to watch. 17-year-old playing in the top Czech league. He's played 36 games there. Stats I really want to talk about with this guy were his 16-year-old stats playing in the U20 Czech league, where he had 42 goals and 47 assists in 39 games. This guy was absolutely blowing up that league. And yeah, I wanted to compare him against another current Czech superstar in David Pastrnak. What was he doing at that same time in his career? He was playing in the Swedish U20 league with 12 goals, 29 points in 36 games. He had 2 points in 5 games at the World Juniors and 10 points in 15 total games as a U18 player. Pastrnak did. While Sale had 9 points in 6 games at the U18 World Junior Championships and 30 points in 28 games overall U18 with this team.
Yeah.
He is showing to be a elite winger, and I'm so excited to watch another young superstar Czech goal scorer.
What was the one stat you were telling me about it? Like his points in... Like, there was a stat that you were telling me about how he's like 2 points per game or something in one of the leagues that he was playing in.
Yeah, it was the playoffs for that year. In 5 games, he had 5 goals and 5 assists.
Jesus. And what league was that in?
That's the U20 Czech league.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah, so absolute domination. I mean, obviously, 17-year-old playing in the Czech league, he only has 3 goals and 3 assists in 26 games this year, but... I mean, that's nothing to scoff at. Again, 17 years old. Exciting.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm glued to my phone right now because I'm trying to find the mock draft that I saw the other day, because you said that he's currently sitting around 8th on the consolidated rankings, right? Around the 8th spot, Sale is. So I was looking at... okay, so here it is. NHL Prospect Discussion. It's one of the better... Instagram accounts that I like to follow that I think relies a bit more heavily on the advanced analytics compared to some other mock drafts out there. It's a good one. They have him at number 8 as well right now. So definitely a player to watch at this tournament. And, anytime there's a young guy on one of these lesser teams, you would expect that he's going to be relied on to, carry the offense more so than he would on a team like Canada, say.
Yeah.
So you're looking at this young player to really make a difference. And, put in that situation, sometimes guys get creative. And I would love to see what kind of offense a player like Sale has up his sleeve after, you telling me his incredible stats. So definitely a good pick. Looking forward to watching this player for sure.
Yeah, me as well. Always a great pick when you're doing a draft in NHL, and love the Pastrnak note there as well. And we saw this with Juraj Slavkovsky, and we've seen it with other players in the past, that a really good tournament just raises their stock come draft time. And Case, I just saw you looking at a mock draft there that had him as high as 4th. Mm-hmm. Man, like if this guy blows up like he's been doing at this tournament, we see him knock out a couple of guys and maybe get into the top 3?
That's exactly what happened with Nico Hischier and Nolan Patrick. Nolan Patrick was slotted at number 1 for the longest time, and then Nico carried Switzerland in the tournament. I think he had 5 goals and 3 assists in 7 games or something like that, and no help at all. And that bumped him up to number 1. And Sale and Dvorsky are candidates for that for sure. They're guys that maybe some GMs don't have a ton of chance to watch them play, and scouts and everything. It's a deep cut player. It's not an NCAA player or OHL, CHL player. U20s and Czech League. Like,
Yeah.
so this is a big opportunity for them, and they've got to step up.
For sure. Okay, for Team Czechia, I'm going to take some low-hanging fruit here. A player that we talked about last year during this episode, and I thought Casey would bring up, but he didn't, and that's Stanislav Svozil. I feel like this is a player we've talked about at length in recent years on the podcast. 37 points in 28 games played with Regina in the WHL this season. Just 5 goals, but he should be expected to lead this team in points. You would at least hope so, because he's been that good in the WHL this year. Drafted by Columbus in 2021, 69th overall. Nice. One of the players in that draft where Columbus, it seems like they were the winners of the draft. They had a really good 2021 draft, and he was a big part of that. So looking forward to seeing how he produces at this tournament, but will definitely be relied on to produce the offense for this team.
Yeah, there's the 2 top defensemen for this team are going to be from Columbus. I think no doubt David Juracek, who's playing for Columbus at the moment, is going to be the other guy. But Stanislav Svozil, I didn't talk about him this year because I've talked about him the last 2 years. This is his 3rd time playing on this team.
Yeah.
So I expect him to be playing a lot of minutes on the back end for them.
And a lot of the offense will be generated through him and, like you mentioned, Juracek as well on the back end. Juracek, I think, has played a bulk of games in the American League too. So this will be nice. He'll be able to play against some competition that aren't necessarily pros yet. So it'll be nice for him to, be back at this tournament and kind of show what he can do, because I think we were all kind of shocked that he's been this good so far this year, like being able to be with Columbus and then being able to put up some good numbers in the American League. So it'll be nice to see what he can do at this level again. I think it was last year where he got that knee injury. So it'll be nice to see him coming back. And like we mentioned, I think a lot of the offense on this team is going to go through the defense and start with Juracek and Svozil.
That's a pretty stacked looking back end for Czechia. Thomas Hamera, Ottawa Senators prospect, he'll be good on the back end. But yeah, you've got the 2-headed monster there. Both Columbus guys, as you both mentioned, Svozil and Juracek. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think Svozil is kind of in Juracek's shadow a little bit because Juracek was the high pick. There will be a lot of focus on him. He's the big D man with the big shot from the blue line. But Svozil is a solid defenseman as well. Columbus has got them both, which is great. They're another franchise that's had a tough season. So, really looking forward to watching both of these guys. But Svozil in particular, that's a good pick.
Yep.
Anyway, for Czechia, I'm taking a guy that has had some American Hockey League experience this year as well, and has looked pretty good, and I think could very well be a steal for my Buffalo Sabres, and that is Yuri Kulik. I think that he'll be one of the offensive guys that this team will really count on. And his American League production so far is pretty good. 16 points in 24 games as an 18-year-old. That's pretty darn good, honestly. So both him and Isaac Rosen heading out from Rochester and going to the World Juniors. But the thing with Kulik, we've mentioned this before, but a guy like Fabian Lysell, as an example, being able to score goals off the rush. He's got a ton of speed. He attacks the net, can come down the wing and just fire the puck. And just the way he looks, his body, and the way he plays, he looks a heck of a lot older than 18 years old. He was the final pick for us, that 28th pick. That, of course, was from the Sam Reinhart deal with Florida in this past draft, and that could be a steal. Buffalo wanted this kid bad, and man, I think he's going to be a big part of this Czech offense.
I remember talking about Kulich last tournament about how good he looked because, coming into the tournament as a younger player, you never know what to really expect from these guys. Like a player who was just drafted, and his shot, his release really stunned me, honestly. Like I didn't know that the kid was that good, and not being, one of the bigger players. Like, he still needs to fill out into his frame. But
yeah, exactly.
It kind of blew me away last tournament, so I am excited to see what he can do at this year's tournament.
Last year, because of the August tournament, he got to play in the U20s and the U18s. He was the captain of the U18 team, and he had 9 goals in 6 games for them.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
The goal scoring threat is there. Guys, this is a dark horse team. Like,
yes,
they're going to play spoiler.
Do not be spoiler. Don't be surprised if they get a medal.
Well, yes, they could play spoiler in the in the semis.
I would not bat an eye if this team won a bronze medal. Honestly,
could see that.
Yeah,
I mean, you expect the powerhouses like Canada and USA to be. I would expect 1 and 2. You never know. Like, Sweden is always good.
Yeah, they're looking like a powerhouse too.
Finland is always good as well. I think Sweden is a bit better than Finland. But for sure, Czechia could be right there in the medal conversation this year.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to Germany. Definitely a country on the rise when it comes to hockey. Look at some of the stars in the league now, the likes of Moritz Seider, Tim Stützle, Leon Draisaitl, of course. So let's get into players to watch on Team Germany. Case?
Yeah, I'm going to go with another player that, maybe he's not going to be an NHL prospect per se, or we're going to see him in a couple of years, but a guy that I think is going to be big for them in this tournament. So kind of the opposite of what Chad was saying at the beginning. This is a guy that I expect to produce in the World Juniors and then maybe drift off. Never know, but that's Adrian Klein. Like, again, I don't know a ton about any of the players on the German team this year. It's a little lacking compared to the last 2 years, but this guy's a returning player. He's played parts of 3 years in the DEL as a young defenseman, and he's played 62 games already. That's a lot of experience, and there's no experience on this back end. There's no one that's played at the top level of pro anywhere. There's no one that's really played in North America or in this tournament. There's a handful of games between him and one other guy. I'm forgetting his name, but that being said, I'm expecting him to kind of get the bulk of the ice time and look to be the workhorse on the back end. So that's my player to watch because I think he's going to be a prominent name amongst this German team.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, again, that's why we don't title these episodes Best Players at the Tournament or something, because there's a bunch of different storylines that you can pick up on, a bunch of different angles that you can attack this from. And, watching a player who could very well be the team's best defenseman or best forward is something interesting, especially if he's on a team where the majority of people out there don't really know a lot of the players. So that's definitely a good pick. I went kind of in the same direction with Team Germany here. They only have 3 players who are currently playing in North America. So I figured those 3 players could be names who you might have heard once or twice or in passing, or you might be at least a little bit familiar with. So that's Luca Hoff, Ryan Del Monte, and Hakan Honlet. Those are the 3 players on this German team who are currently playing in North America. I went with a different player, though, who does have some North American experience. I believe so, unless I'm getting things mixed up here as I went through the German team quickly a couple hours ago. But I want to talk about Julian Lutz. Julian Lutz, he was drafted in the second round, last draft, by Arizona in the second round. 43rd overall. So he has 6 points in 13 games this year in the DEL, and he's an 18-year-old. Something I wanted to point out, too, about this player is that he absolutely tore up the Alps HL as a 16-year-old. So you might hear the Alps HL and you might kind of scoff at it because it's known as, one of the lesser pro leagues over in Europe. But, as a 16-year-old to be able to play pro and absolutely tear it up is pretty incredible in its own right. So that's the player I think I'm going to be watching the most, is Julian Lutz, to see if Arizona can hit on one of these, 100 picks that they've made over the last few years and will continue to make in the coming years as they've been so bad. So Julian Lutz, that's a player I'm looking at. So
for the first time, you picked a guy that I had for Germany, and you guys know how much I thought that, I thought highly of the draft that Arizona just had, despite what you guys may think. But look, they're a team that has acquired a lot of picks, and they got a hit on some. Bill Armstrong certainly likes wingers with size, and this is a guy that fits that. And He's a good-looking player, and I think by his numbers so far, a very unselfish player that more of a playmaker, wants to set up other guys, and he could be a stud for this German team, that's for sure.
All right, I don't know a ton about him, so I'll just continue on.
Yeah, there's another player on Germany who I did mention. Hakan Honlet, who was drafted in the 5th round last year by Washington. He plays for Gatineau right now in the QMJHL. 17 points in 28 games this season. Another player who is playing in North America. He's been drafted, so that could be another player that Germany relies on to carry the offense because, like we've already mentioned, they don't have their big guys. They don't have their horses up front or on the back end, like the case of Moritz Seider a couple years ago. So it seems like, we know German hockey is growing slowly but surely, and it will get better as time goes on. But just for whatever reason this year, they don't have any bona fide superstars. And that's not to say that there won't be a couple next year or the year after. Just this year, it seems like they're going to have to score by committee if they want to do any damage.
Man, I got to tell you, that was so much fun watching that German team that had Florian Elias, Tim Stützle, and JJ Peterka. Just the three-headed monster. That was a lot of fun. And I feel like this team will be fun to watch as well. And like I said, Lutz was the guy that I wanted to talk about, but I feel like he'll be a good player for them. So just quickly, I'll talk about Thomas Hagel, 19-year-old. He'll be a veteran for this German team, over a point per game in the Alps HL so far. A smaller, skilled forward, and again, you think of these hockey countries that are trying to develop and get better, a lot of young players, but this is a guy who will be a veteran for them and is putting up good numbers so far. A little bit smaller, but he's got a lot of skill, and I feel like will be a big part of their success if they have any at this tournament. So,
for sure.
All right, our last team to touch on in Group A, and that is Team Austria. So players to watch for the Austrians case.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to another returning player, and kind of one of the only players I really remember from this team last year was David Reinbach, defenseman for them, decent sized. He ate up a lot of minutes for these guys. He had 2 apples in the 4 games they got to play. So again, I'm expecting to see a defenseman with experience be that horse that they need, and the guy who's going to be maybe a player to watch because you're going to see him get eaten up by a lot of teams' top lines because he's going to be playing against them, and that's a tough draw. But yeah, that's my guy.
Okay, I won't pretend to know a lot about the Austrian team here.
Let me quickly say about this guy. He's a half a point per game this year in the top Swiss league, the National League, and I don't know, that's something to say as a young defenseman. He's got 14 points in 28 games. So expect him to play power play when he's not getting, worked by Connor Bedard.
Caved in his own zone when they win 12-0 like they do. Like I said, I'm not going to claim to know a ton about the players on Team Austria here, but that's kind of why we do this, right? We do a bit of research. We pick players that we think will be fun to watch. And on this team, I did go with the low-hanging fruit. I picked the only player, I believe anyway, the only player that's been drafted on this team, and that's Vinzenz Rohrer. He was drafted by Montreal in the previous draft, 2021, 75th overall, and he has 32 points in 26 games in Ottawa this year for the 67s in the OHL. In the last year, he had 48 in 64, again, for Ottawa in the OHL. So this is a player who has at least had a taste of that North American competition, which, as we know, is just slightly different from what it is like to play overseas. Not better, not worse, just different. So we have a player here with some experience playing against some of the best players who are going to be in this tournament. And that's the player I'm going to pick. Again, I'll repeat his name and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments here. Vinzenz Rohrer, drafted by the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, another great pick for the Canadians. In outside the first round, they got Owen Beck as well in the second round, and nice bit of business there by Kent Hughes at this last draft for sure. He's been a great player in Ottawa, and maybe we see this guy kind of be another version of Marco Rossi for the Austrians. Just that one guy, like Nico Hischier was for Switzerland at this tournament, just to carry the load. And, we don't expect Austria to win a game, maybe one, but or have a lot of success. But to have a stud like this is pretty nice for sure.
Absolutely. And that's 4-1 for the Leafs over Tampa. Gotta love that. Nylander just got his, I think, 18th goal, maybe 19th of the year. Gotta love it.
Well, again, like you said, just not going to pretend that I know a lot about Austria, but it's pretty impressive when when we're doing our prep and you're looking on multiple sites and you see that 17-year-old kid on a hockey country trying to build itself up is listed as a player to watch, and that's Ian Scherzer. So he'll be a guy to keep an eye on. Again, a young forward, 6 feet tall, 181 pounds, and not bad production with Rogel so far. 7 points in 18 games, so not bad for a bottom six forward in the NHL, let's say. And just impressive to see a 17-year-old kid like Scherzer on a country that will be lower in the standings in this tournament listed as a guy to watch.
Yep, and he'll have a good opportunity to show his worth at the tournament for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that does it for players to watch in Group A at the World Juniors, and we've got the players to watch in Group B coming up.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details, and don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at www.patreon.com/boysinthebooth.